Hey everyone, today we're releasing a fabulous conversation I had with my friend and the original Rational Optimist, Matt Ridley, a couple of weeks ago at the Strategic Investment Conference. We talk about rational optimism, rational pessimism, what's going on in Europe, energy policy, what region Matt will be max long for the next couple of years, and lots more. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. Delighted to be joined by the man who started the Rational Optimist movement back in 2010. Matt Ridley is one of the world's most important thinkers. He's a prolific author, written many best-selling books. And back in 2010, he wrote the Rational Optimist book, which changed my life. Matt, I want to talk about your latest book, Birds, Sex and Beauty. And my question after reading it is, are we in fact just honorary birds?
Well, Stephen, it's great to be with you, and thanks so much for inviting me here, and great to be with the Malden audience as well. I think we are honorary birds. Now, what do I mean by that? Most mammals, they don't have good vision, they can't see color, they don't sing, they use smell. We're not like that. We're like birds. We see color, we use vision a lot, and we do a lot of displaying. And so my latest book is about this weird form of evolution called sexual selection, which is dramatic in birds, where you get peacock's tails and things like that. And my argument towards the end of the book, it's not about humans, it is about birds, but the argument towards the end is maybe the human brain is the equivalent of the peacock's tail. It emerged not to help us get through ordinary everyday tasks, but as a way of showing off to members of the opposite sex. There you go. That's the theme of the book, Bird, Sex and Beauty.
When we met for breakfast back in London a couple of months ago, I said The Rational Optimist, although was written, over 15 years ago now, is the perfect philosophical guide for the world today, for understanding the world and what's going on. It seems like we're moving away from this 80-year period of believing free trade is good and open borders are open free trade is good. Can you remind everyone why free trade is good?
Yes, and to your more general point, I'm very conflicted between how pessimistic I feel about how the world won't take this message on board, that the future could be bright if we got things right, and how optimistic I feel about it could be. But free trade is, for me, an absolutely vital part of what made the world more prosperous in the last 2 centuries, and in particular in the last 50 years. And what's good about it? Well, it enables you to have access to the collective brain, as I put it, to the ideas and thoughts and products of other people in other parts of the world. You're not confined, if you indulge in free trade, you're not confined to getting your ideas locally, to self-sufficiency, to whatever happens to be invented and developed and produced in your own country. You're able to tap into somebody somewhere at the other side of the globe who has made something cheaper or made something more reliable or affordable. And that's a really valuable thing when you think about it. And so when you boil it down to that essence, it is an important reminder that if you cut yourself off from the whole of, or a big chunk of the world, you reduce the chances of raising your own standard of living. Now, of course, it's more complicated than that. Nations do exist. There are borders, there are customs, there are all these different things. There are strategic and geopolitical complications to free trade. But the basic Ricardian lesson that I'm good at, if I do what I'm good at and you do what you're good at somewhere else in the world, and we both meet up and exchange in some virtual marketplace, we can both be better off. That basic lesson must not be lost in this increasingly protectionist era, I feel.
Do you think we're walking back into a 1930s style, tariff protectionist spiral?
Well, if I think back to 15, 20 years ago, when we were still talking about restarting the Doha round of WTO talks, etc., we were at the end of a period where we had reduced tariffs and quotas and other protections steadily all around the world between lots of different countries and groups of countries. And yes, there was still a lot of protectionism in the world, but it was always just inching its way in a better direction. And it's going backwards now. We've given up on, multilateral free trade of the kind that the WTO espoused. We are now hopeful of some bilateral ways of reducing trade barriers. That's what free trade agreements are. And that's what where the action is today. But it does feel to me a bit like the early 20th century, when the great experiment of unilateral free trade, starting with Britain abolishing the Corn Laws and opening up its markets on behalf of its consumers to the rest of the world and daring other countries to follow suit, that great period in the 19th century had crested and broken and gone backwards, and you had Smoot-Hawley in the United States, and you had protectionism in the British Empire, and you had tit-for-tat retaliation all around the world. And as a result, countries like Japan said, well, if we can't get the rubber and other commodities we need by trade, maybe we'll get them by conquest instead. That wasn't the only force behind the world descending into world war, but it was one of them. And that is a concerning trend in my view.
Usually the way these things end or kind of play out, it's almost Rene Girard's like cycle. They usually end in war. They usually end in conflict or conquest. Do you think the world has changed sufficiently for us to solve that problem another way, or do you still see that being the way that things will likely play out?
Well, I'm enough of an optimist to take some comfort from the fact that we have steadily reduced the number of wars in the world, despite Ukraine, despite Gaza, despite Syria. This has been a period with relatively few wars going on compared with even 20, 30 years ago. There are basically no wars in the Western Hemisphere now. That's a new thing. There was nearly always some kind of war going on in Latin America before that. Likewise, in Africa, there are many fewer wars. So, and conventional warfare is so different now, and Ukraine has shown us that. And the threat of nuclear retaliation is always hanging over it, which does to some extent keep the peace. So I don't think history ever quite repeats itself, of course, and so one can't draw any conclusions about what's going to happen next. But I do think we have to be concerned that the situation in Taiwan, the situation in Ukraine, and in a number of other places does look a little like the Spanish Civil War before the World War. I hope that's not a good parallel, but I think we need to be concerned about the possibility.
What do you make of China's technological rise now that they're now innovating the West, and they're number one in batteries, they're number one in EVs, in drones, they're building more nuclear power plants than anyone else? Do you think that's good or bad for the world?
Well, in my book, How Innovation Works, I did say it's a mistake to think of China as just catching up. It's not. It's overtaking. There's all sorts of technologies in which they're ahead of us. And I remember when I first heard about people ordering food in restaurants with QR codes and things like that in China, I thought, wow, that's amazing. Now it's routine even here, of course. And so I do think that China is an innovative country. But I've also made the case recently, and I believe this very strongly, that it is killing its own golden goose, and it'll stop laying eggs pretty soon. And by that, I mean that you can see a dramatic fall off in the number of startups in China. You can see a considerable fall in the amount of economic freedom that Chinese people had under the what held in China from Deng Xiaoping right through to Hu Jintao. There was a pretty good compromise, zero political freedom, but quite a lot of economic freedom, more than entrepreneurs had in the West. Fewer petty rules and regulations hemming them in, so they could get off to the races quicker when they started a business and so on. That has changed under Xi Jinping. There's no doubt there is more economic centralization, economic direction, and political interference. And I don't think that's a good prospect from China's point of view. So I think you're going to see China start to falter as the most innovative country in the world in the years to come. Just one example, Stephen, and it may not be a meaningful one, but I've been recently following and writing about a guy called He Jiankui, who was the guy who gene edited human embryos back in 2018, and he was jailed for 3 years for that. He touched an ethical third rail. He's back out there. He's out of jail. He was in Wuhan for a while, which is an interesting place to be, and then he's now in Beijing. And he's talking about gene editing human embryos quite openly on social media, saying we need to start doing it. It's a better idea than trying to cure diseases with pharmaceuticals, et cetera, et cetera. And I just pose the question, is he doing this with regime approval? Because if so, it's a very big departure from what the Chinese government had previously done, which is said we want our scientists to obey the same rules and conventions as Western scientists. So there are things happening there that I think may be innovative in some ways, but also may be quite disturbing.
What do you think about the prospect of gene editing embryos?
Well, in terms of non-human embryos, I think it's a very exciting way in which we can do medical breakthroughs, but also agricultural ones. We've had just in the last few days, the FDA in the US has approved the pigs that are resistant to a particularly nasty virus, gene edited. We're seeing crops gene edited all the time. This is a fantastic technology for that. But the idea that you would take human beings and edit them in such a way that for the whole of their lives they would be free of particular mutations, etc. Well, probably a good way of curing many genetic afflictions is also a good way of messing with the essence of human beings in attempts to improve them, enhance them, and probably will backfire in many cases. So it is still a very tricky issue ethically and in terms of safety. And I'm certainly not ready yet to say that people should be allowed to go in and change the genes of their embryos before birth. What they can do is select them, select against particularly nasty inherited diseases. We do that already before doing IVF, and that seems to me a very reasonable thing to do. But to actually go in and alter genes, I hope we're not ready for that yet. I don't think it's right for human beings yet.
Ideas having sex might be the phrase that you will be most remembered for. When you look out and survey the land right now, are there any two underappreciated technologies, innovations that you feel are ready to mate and spawn the next, billion-dollar, trillion-dollar industry?
Yeah, the problem with that question, Stephen, is if I knew the answer to it, I'd be out there starting a billion-dollar industry rather than sitting here talking to you about it. And of course, one of the points I make again and again is that we don't see big technological breakthroughs coming. We ought to, but nobody saw that search engines were going to be incredibly important, incredibly profitable once the internet came along. It's very obvious in retrospect that was going to happen, but it wasn't obvious at the time. So I think I can be forgiven for not knowing what's immediately around the corner. But, there are all sorts of technologies that are coming together, particularly the two big themes of biotech and AI. There's very little doubt that in the intersection between those two technologies, and people like Jamie Metzl have written interesting books about this, that in that intersection, we're going to see some very exciting things. Our AI has already enabled us to understand protein folding. It's already revolutionizing drug discovery. At the same time, there are, things like de-extinction of mammoths and Tasmanian tigers going to happen in the next few years or decades. So that's where the marriage or the sexual relations between ideas is going to be most fertile, I think. But there'll be other things. I'd like to see what biotech can do to improve aquaculture so that we can feed farmed salmon on soybeans rather than other fish. I'd like to see what drones are going to contribute to conservation and ecology. There are lots of areas like that where I think we can imagine technologies coming together and doing interesting things with their offspring.
As you've said many times, innovation is really a bottom-up phenomenon, but industrial policy is back in vogue right now. Do you think it's possible for a state to invest billions or even hundreds of billions of dollars in a technology without smothering bottoms-up magic?
Well, I'm a big skeptic about winner picking. I've seen far too many cases of governments thinking they're picking winners and ending up picking losers because losers are good at picking governments, as it were, to support them. And betting on the wrong technologies, investing heavily in technologies that turn out to be dead ends, missing really quite important stuff that's happening out of view, and thereby wasting money, but also, as you say, smothering things because, a $50 billion budget does tend to push people in wrong directions and so on. So I would like to see a much more bottom-up approach to the support for technology. Now, when people say, so you don't want to fund science, you don't want to fund technology, I say, well, if the government's going to take 40% of my income off me, I'd quite like some of it to go into innovation rather than just being spent on other things. And so, yes, it'd be nice to find ways. How do we do that? Well, I think the main thing that I would spend money on if I was Minister of Technology in a government is just simply easing the path for entrepreneurs to whatever it is they want to invent. So getting down the cost of energy, getting down the cost of planning and regulation, getting down the cost of meeting people and sharing ideas. So, paying for infrastructure, paying for conferences, paying for that kind of stuff is actually, it sounds kind of low tech, but in a funny way, that's what the entrepreneurs really need, rather than saying, oh, I think that we ought to be inventing technologies for dimming the sun, which is an example the British government has just recently said it wants to spend £50 million on. It also wants us to invest in solar panels. So there's a slight mismatch there, if you think about it. So that's one way. The other thing I do with money to help support innovation is more prizes. I think giving people subsidies and grants to do work isn't as effective as giving them prizes for achieving certain goals. Saying, look, here's a goal we want to achieve. Gates Foundation has done some neat things here. It said, let's see if we can find a vaccine to pneumococcus. It won't be very profitable because it's poor people who suffer from it, but we will give a chunk of money to subsidize the rollout of a vaccine if any pharmaceutical company goes out and invests it. So effectively, that's a sort of post-invention prize. And it worked very well. They got 2 companies came forward with good vaccines. They backed them, and it's been helpful. So more prizes and more support for basic infrastructure of innovators is the way I would be spending my money.
America has certainly been at the frontier of AI, but what I've noticed digging into China and what's going on with DeepSeek is they're really forced on diffusion. It's being used everywhere. It's being integrated into cars and drones and even government. Which ecosystem is more likely to win the AI race? Because I think about Europe and the US, centuries ago, where Europe kind of invented, electricity and all these type of things, but America just ran with it. So how do you kind of compare that to what's going on today?
Well, you keep asking me to say what's going to happen in the future, and I don't know. But yeah, I do think that DeepSeek is a very important moment, and I think that getting the cost of AI, the energy cost of AI in particular, down is a pretty dramatically important invention. Again and again, I make the point in How Innovation Works that it's not the invention of the first prototype that really counts. It's the driving down of the cost by innovators later in the process who don't get statues and don't get prizes, but they're often more important. So in that sense, I agree with you that I think what China is doing with AI is probably more significant at the moment. But I wouldn't ever write America off for the obvious reason that, again and again, we've made the mistake of underestimating American ingenuity. I think of the time in the 1980s when everybody thought Japan was overtaking America, and then America went into its garage basically and came up with all sorts of software developments that completely changed the world. So I think that is going to happen again. Just to take the AI example, I'm hearing exciting things from MIT about how to do deep learning that is much cheaper in energy terms than what DeepSeek does already. So I think there's life in the old dog yet, as they say. I don't want to compare America to a dog, but you know what I mean. So you know, go back to the point that I just don't like the dirigiste, centralized Ming Empire like approach of Xi Jinping. I don't think that'll work in the long run.
You've written about how the next 50 years could really be the golden age of biotech, right? Just like the last 50 years was for information and digital technology. One of the most hyped or talked about biotech innovations right now is Ozempic, of course. So is it the wonder drug people are making it out to be, or what's going on?
Yeah, just to reinforce the point about different innovation, different technologies developing at different rates, I'm very, very struck by how the first half of the 20th century was dominated by spectacular changes in transport, but very little in information technology. And the second half of the 20th century was the exact opposite. So I think that teaches us that it's a mistake to think that whatever technology is moving fastest in your era will go on moving fastest in the next era. And I've already noticed that the pace of change in consumer electronics has slowed down, that I don't feel the need to replace my smartphone nearly as often as I used to about 10 years ago. So in that sense, I think the focus may not, AI and IT may not be quite as dominant in the next 40, 50 years as we have tended to think. And that actually we probably aren't noticing just how spectacular the changes in biotech are. You mentioned Ozempic. It's in the news again today. It's being, it and its the other semaglutides are being hailed as wonder drugs that will help with cancer, help with heart disease, and help with many of the processes of aging. I worry that that's a little too over-optimistic, that I think we're probably about to discover but we already know some of the downsides. I think some of the early experiments are very promising, and very early trials are very promising, but I don't think one should quite say we've solved the problem of aging yet. But it certainly looks like we're on course to have a pill that will, at the moment it's an injection, but it's heading towards being a pill that will help with obesity, help with heart disease, help maybe with some cancers. And that is very exciting. But it's only one of many ways in which biotech is going to be contributing spectacularly to what we do. And cancer vaccines is, I think, a very, very promising technology. And the messenger RNA technology used to develop COVID vaccines, while it got a slightly bad reputation with a lot of people in COVID, is a technology that was originally being thought of for cancer vaccination. And I suspect there is a really promising future there. So I think biotech in medicine and biotech in agriculture, by the way, are both extraordinarily promising right now.
You have a situation today where the UK is effectively paying for two power systems, right? You have the intermittent renewables plus the gas backup, which I believe you have 4 or 5 times the power costs that's in America. How do you reindustrialize when that happens? What can actually be done? What's the most realistic things we can do to cut UK price powers and kind of close that parity gap?
Yeah, it's really shocking. My country, the UK, now has the most expensive electricity in the world. Well, in the OECD, I mean, I'm sure there's a small country somewhere with more expensive electricity for both industrial and domestic consumers. And it's quite a recent phenomenon, this. We've shot up to the top of the league. Aren't we brilliant? We're the most expensive country in the world for electricity. Well, that isn't just killing our steel industry and our chemical industry. It's also killing our new industries. It's making it hard to have data centers and AI work in the UK. So this is a real crisis, I think, for the UK economy, paying 5 times as much, 4 to 5 times as much for our electricity as Americans do. That can't make sense. As you say, a big contributor to that is the fact that we've built the unreliables, as I call them, wind and solar, out on a big scale, and then we've had to build the reliables to back them up, and we've also had to put in an enormous amount of infrastructure to connect those unreliables to the grid. What could we do to change that? Well, I think the simplest thing to do is to say when you build a wind farm, and you can only get access and sell your electricity to the grid if you also agree to sell it 24/7. Now, that'll concentrate the minds because when the wind doesn't blow 24/7. So what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to contract with someone else to back up your own supply, and that will force you to confront the actual costs of producing your electricity. I coined a term for how much electricity we can get from solar in the UK in December. It's called the square root of sod all. And there is only one country in the world that is less suitable for solar power, i.e. more cloudy, more far north, so its demand is in winter, and with higher costs of infrastructure. And I'm afraid it's your country, it's Ireland.
Well, I see solar panels everywhere and wind turbines everywhere, unfortunately. On the point of the unreliables, do you think there's some type of cutoff in the hours of sunshine per year where you say it seems like we've been in an absolutist regime for renewables so far? It's like you're either against solar or you're pro it, and it's like max long or max short. Do you see it basically being used as a very good tool in places like Saudi Arabia or near the equator or whatever, and it's just unsuitable for Alaska and UK and Ireland?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that solar power can be a significant contributor in Arizona and Saudi Arabia and places like that. That's not in doubt. But there is a very good paper which argues that north of the Alps, a solar panel probably doesn't earn back the energy that went into its manufacture. Now, it may earn it back. There is dispute about that, but only marginally. And you need a really big energy return on energy invested for a modern economy. You can't be doing with a factor of 5. You need a factor of 60 or 70, like you get with oil and gas, or thousands, which you get with nuclear. That seems to me to be the issue. But the heart of the problem here is that in all the debates about how we generate our energy in the West, we never seem to take the consumer's point of view to say, how do we position it such that the consumer gets to choose something that is both cheap and reliable? What we look at it from how are we going to reward the producers? Well, the producers are making out like bandits in these areas. That's not the problem. The problem is how is the consumer going to get regular, dispatchable, affordable energy? And I think we've taken our eye off the ball and we're looking at it from the wrong end of the telescope.
Prospect do you see for nuclear in the UK?
Well, we're building out a nuclear power station at the moment. It's going to be ready in about 2030. We started about, 7 or 8 years ago. That's a long build time. The same design is going to be built in about 3 years in Korea, I believe. That gives you an idea of just how slow we've got at doing these things. Until we can bring the cost and the time of building nuclear down in the UK, we won't be able to roll it out, let alone do small modular, which is obviously the way to go in terms of learning by doing, as it were. There is a good future for nuclear, but we've got to open our minds to a much more nimble regulatory regime, one that recognizes designs approved elsewhere, one that doesn't have an absolutist approach where, you must make absolutely sure that the most improbable accident that could ever happen can never happen in a million years. That's the sort of approach we have at the moment. And when you think about it, nuclear is the safest form of any electricity generation there is. If you look at deaths per watt generated, it's safer than solar, it's safer than wind, it's safer than coal and oil and gas. That includes what happened in Chernobyl and Fukushima and 3 Mile Island. Very few people died in those accidents, and one of them, Chernobyl, was really, really stupid design, run by a really, really bad regime in a really incompetent way. So we've tested this technology to destruction and said if we're sensible about it, it can be an incredibly safe technology.
There's a lot of excitement right now about a possible European rejuvenation. Obviously, Germany came out and said, hey, we're going to spend $1 trillion. Half of that is in defense. What are your thoughts on the prospect of the reality of a European innovation, a rejuvenation?
Well, if you mean economic rejuvenation, I'm not seeing much sign of it on the ground, I'm afraid. I'm seeing Europe still obsessed with regulating technology rather than encouraging it. The AI Act that the European Union passed was a shocking example of basically stifling any development in the womb. And the Europeans often boast about, we are going to create a perfect regulatory regime for a new technology before it even exists. And then they wonder why America goes much faster into this new technology than they do. Because I think the idea of regulation as enabling innovation is still there in Brussels, and it's wrong. It really is wrong. On the whole, regulation stifles innovation. That said, of course, you need regulation. It's just you don't need daft regulation. And, the GDPR thing whereby I have to click every time I open a new website in Europe and in the UK, where we're still mirroring all that stuff, has demonstrably achieved nothing in terms of individual consumers' privacy, but has slowed down the development of AI and on the whole helped big firms rather than small ones. So I wish I saw more signs of a European rejuvenation. Yes, there's bound to be some areas where Europe can get its act together, but I'm not terribly optimistic about Europe at the moment.
A European bureaucrat, they never met an innovation they didn't want to regulate, right? Our mutual friend, Marion Tupy, has said one of the problems or the main problem with Europe is that when you had the EU all integrated into one block, you had 27 or whatever states come together, nations of business come together, and they all settled on these individual rules that lowered the competitive kind of dynamics between the companies in those countries. Do you think the only way to rejuvenate innovation in Europe is to get rid of the EU?
Well, it's not, I don't have a dog in that fight in the sense that my country did leave the EU. And as a result, we don't, keep a watching brief on what's going on in Brussels to the same extent as we once did. And for me, in a sense, I see the problem as opposite from what Marion was saying there, which is that the EU wants to harmonize the rules so they're exactly the same in every part of the country. Well, there's another way to go, which is called mutual recognition, saying, look, if your regulator in one country has deemed something safe, then we'll recognize that, and vice versa. And that way, you can actually do a little bit of experimentation in how you regulate things and how you encourage innovation. You can get countries competing against each other within the European free trade area to find better ways of doing things. That's sort of roughly what America has always done. That's the states as laboratories model that has been so important in the US. In particular, California going off in a direction that deliberately did assist enterprise and entrepreneurs. If there was one blanket rule about everything all across America, I think it would be a much less innovative place. So allowing for disharmony, for competition, for variety within Europe feels to me a better way to go.
You've warned we may be less better off in 2050 than we could be. Say more.
Yes, this is a graph that fascinates me. It's produced for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change by a panel of economists and social scientists and scientists. And it basically shows 5 scenarios of what might happen to the world economy in the 21st century. And the most dynamic of them, SSP5, it's called, Sustainable Socioeconomic Pathway 5, shows that the average citizen of planet Earth will be 3 times as rich in 2050 as today, and 14 times as rich in 2100. Now, that is a spectacular goal to aim for. I mean, imagine that. Imagine that, the average Nigerian in 2100 is about as rich as the average American is today in real terms. And that only requires 2.8% annual growth, by the way. It's not a very rapid rate of growth. So how do they describe that scenario? Well, they describe it as being one with competitive markets, a lot of innovation, a lot of progress in technology, a rapid fall in inequality, sustainable development, the ability to manage and cope with social and ecological problems. It all sounds rather wonderful. But then they say, yes, but there'll be more emissions. And those emissions will cause climate change, which will reduce the increase in GDP per capita from 14 times to maybe 12 times. Sounds all right to me. So in other words, my point is there are recipes for growing the world economy that could produce truly spectacular results in this century. And I don't think most countries are on the path towards enacting those recipes. Argentina may be at the moment, but I'm not sure many others are. And so I don't think the world is going to be poorer in 2050 or 2100 than it is today. I'm certainly not that kind of pessimist. But I think it's going to be a lot poorer than it could be if it really developed really sound, helpful policies to encourage innovation.
When you talk to policymakers in the UK, Matt, and you pitch them on this, they've gone to Oxford, they've gone to Cambridge, they understand the basic economics and all that stuff. What's actually getting in the way of implementing these policies and creating that amazing world by 2050?
Well, as you know, Stephen, I spent some years in the House of Lords in Parliament. And what gobsmacked me about that experience was how little time we spent talking about innovation at all, in any form, in any sector. We spent our entire time either talking about how to spend the money that the government had taken in and who should get the greatest share of it, or about the culture war, about which pronouns we should be using, or something like that. I exaggerate, but only slightly. The everyday life of the everyday politician is taken up with things that are of no relevance or are a hindrance towards innovation. And when innovation does come up, it's usually in terms of how can government spend money picking winners, which we touched on earlier. And the space that is made in the legislative process, or indeed the policy-making arena, for conversations about how to unleash innovation is truly limited to a depressing degree. So I'm afraid that's my answer, is that neither the politicians nor the bureaucrats and civil servants who basically run the place, giving the politicians the blame, but doing the work themselves, neither of those sectors really spends much time thinking about this at all.
So you're telling me Yes, Prime Minister was actually a documentary?
Yes, Prime Minister was probably an underplaying of how bad it is.
If you rewrote The Rational Optimist today, which again was published 15 years ago, which chapter, if any, do you think would get the most dramatic overhaul?
I think the last chapter, which I called it the catalaxy, which is a word that Hayek coined, which I thought was a wonderful word, but I didn't manage to make it catch on any more than Hayek did. But the catalaxy, which is the process of exchange and specialization by which we raise each other's living standards in this world, that chapter. It's a mixture of optimism and pessimism. It's attempting to be a crystal ball about the 21st century. I don't think it's particularly wrong yet in many particulars. I think it even mentions pandemics as a possibility. And it also mentions other problems like wars or asteroid impacts or megavolcanoes, perhaps. There's all sorts of things that could go wrong. We know that. But what I don't think it does is nail this point about the opportunity cost of bad policy. The fact that, yes, technology is going to bail us out of many of our problems. And despite wars and despite epidemics and despite culture wars, we are going to get richer in our grandchildren's time, but not nearly as much as we could if we really put our shoulders to the wheel and came up with sensible economic innovations.
What has been the opportunity cost of censorship over the past 10 or 15 years? It seems like just even having to think about what you say or what you do has just taken up an amazing amount of brain cycles. That question also, do you think we're kind of past peak censorship for now?
Well, as you know, I'm pretty concerned about this. The pandemic really brought home to me how dangerously authoritarian an awful lot of people want the world to be. And the degree to which, perfectly sensible things like the Great Barrington Declaration saying maybe lockdowns are not the right way to go, got censored by Google, by Facebook, by Twitter, literally censored, downgraded, banned, all these things. Often at the behest of government. The Twitter files that Matt Taibbi and Mike Schellenberger found is a really shocking event in the history of the Western world. And at the same time, we've learned to tiptoe on eggshells, if that's the right expression, around issues of gender, issues of religion. We've got strong pressure in the United Kingdom Parliament at the moment to bring back a blasphemy law to stop people criticizing Islam. Well, we fought long and hard through the Enlightenment to get rid of the idea that there should be blasphemy laws. So I am bothered by the degree to which censorship with either a capital C or a small c, if you see what I mean, has become, cancellation would be the small c version, has become a problem in recent years. But I'm also encouraged, as you imply, by the victories in that culture war that have happened recently. Certainly on the gender issue, just recently the Supreme Court in the UK has ruled on this question in a very clarifying way that has, I think, helped a lot. But on a number of other issues, and this is where the Donald Trump's victory. I don't have a, I try not to take political sides in the US, but I do think that the cleaning out of the Augean stables on things like the way the pandemic was handled, the way the lab leak theory was handled, which I've obviously written a lot about, that those issues needed to happen.
What skills do you think will be the biggest winners or losers in the AI era? It seems like on one side you have people saying it's going to, kill us all and all that stuff. On the other side, there's a lot of people asleep at the wheel and think it's not going to change anything. But how do you thrive in this new AI era?
Well, I wouldn't want to be a poet in the next 10 years. It seems to me these ChatGPT and others are really good at writing moderately good poetry. It's not Shakespeare, but it's a lot better than I can write. If I ask one of these large language models to describe a recent experience I've had in the style of Tennyson, it can do a fantastic job, or Kipling or something. So that isn't that surprising? And I wouldn't want to be an actor who depends on reading talking books, for example, as well. It's going to get really good at that. So there's the professions it's going to pull the rug out from under are quite surprising in many ways, because it's not going to be very good at cooking or house cleaning or anything like that yet. So those guys are probably safer in their jobs. I think managing people is the elite, well-paid skill that it will struggle at for a long time. And learning to, run meetings, listen to people, manage problems in the workplace, all those kind of things are, I suspect, going to be tough for AIs for some time to come. So that's what you need to make sure you spend time on in your MBA or whatever it is. But I don't know. Who knows? I might be wrong.
Has it or will it change how you write books?
Well, it hasn't yet, in the sense that the internet has changed it spectacularly. My ability to look things up in a flash and not have to go to libraries is incredibly different to what it was 30 years ago. But in the sense of using the AIs to do some of the work for me, no, I'm not doing that. But I'm talking to people who are, and there probably will come a time when I do. I'm enough of a arrogant so-and-so to think that my ability to form a mellifluous sentence is not going to be improved by ChatGPT or something like it. So I think what it's really doing is raising the floor rather than the ceiling. So in other words, for people who really struggle to write decent sentences, it's really helpful. But for people who are quite good at it, it's not yet a major significant thing. But, if I want to get a particular area of research summarized, then an AI is a hell of a lot better than a simple Google search. There's no doubt about that.
Just on that point, it will obviously be different industry to industry, but do you think AI is the great equalizer, or will it create even more inequality?
Oh, I think it's the equalizer. I think that's a really good point. And I think we're making a mistake if we think that it'll end up making the world less equal. I think the internet kind of did that to some extent already. In the old days, if you were rich, you had secretaries to do stuff for you. Now you can do it with a couple of clicks, and everyone can do it. So I do think on the whole, technology does bring down inequality and will continue to do so. Not always, but mostly.
I know we only have a couple of minutes here, so maybe a fun questions to close. If you had to be max long one region through 2050, who do you pick and why?
India. I think the combination of enterprise, freedom, education, tradition and culture in India is a very exciting combination for innovation in the world. Incredibly talented people, huge country, enormous potential. Yes, it's got all sorts of problems, but I think it's also a place of fantastic opportunity. In fact, when I was in Jaipur recently at the Jaipur Literary Festival, I actually said, I think the job of the most innovative country in the world is coming vacant, with China becoming dirigiste, America going behind tariff walls, Europe stagnating, Japan going nowhere. And I think you guys, the Indians, you should apply for the job.
If innovators like James Watt and George Stephenson had have had access to Twitter and social media, you think the Industrial Revolution would have accelerated or ended in trade wars?
Well, it would have done both, wouldn't it? They had plenty of patent disputes. Those kind of 19th century innovators got into fearsome arguments with each other and hated each other a lot anyway. Could it have been any worse? Possibly. But would it have distracted them from the important work they were doing? Well, yeah, but it would also have enabled them to share their ideas much quicker. So, this year, a few months from now, we celebrate the 200th anniversary of the Stockton and Darlington Railway, which is George Stephenson's extraordinary, brilliant innovation when he basically redesigned the idea of a railway with wrought iron rails, but also the idea of putting locomotives on it for long distances rather than just between Pithead and coal mine. And the launch of that with locomotion number one, the first really practical locomotive, is just an incredible moment in human history. And he was drawing on other people's ideas, but think how quickly and well he could have done that if he had access to the internet.
A little lightning round here to finish things out. We're going to list 15 technologies. We're going to say if they're overrated or underrated. Call it through the next 5 years, through 2030. Okay.
Well, only if you do too.
Oh, okay. Well, listen.
You say what you think.
I'll follow up very quickly. You can give the people are here to hear you. So let's start with AI.
I think a little overrated. I think it's a fantastic technology going places, but I think the hype at the moment is just a little too premature.
Would agree. Brain-computer interfaces.
Again, a touch overrated. I think it's coming. I think there's exciting stuff, Neuralink and others, but it's got a long way to go before it gets through the first 15 years. You overestimate the impact of a new technology rather than underestimate it.
Yeah, incredibly exciting, but kind of you need to scale it up, right? Quantum computing.
Don't understand it well enough to know. Am I allowed to answer like that?
That's fair.
I have the exact same answer as you.